Good day, Chief here. Today I'm going to talk about, hey Top, hey First Sergeant, how you doing? When I first joined the military in the enlisted ranks, at first I was like, well, do I want to go all the way to First Sergeant or Command Sergeant Major? Command Sergeant Major didn't sound too interesting to me because it just seemed like it was going to be a lot of work. But I had some great first sergeants and I had some bad first sergeants. I played the video ages ago when I was enlisted of our first sergeant giving us that speech after we returned from Operation Desert Shield Storm. Probably the best first sergeant I ever had. He's also the one that looked at my file, called me into his office one day and he goes, "Hey Sergeant, I see you got a P2 on your hearing." So I told him the story. I don't know if I've told this story, but in order to get out of Diddy Bop school, or Morse Code school, they had to give me tendinitis and make it a P2, which actually limited me in some of the MOSs that I was trying to select. Since I said they had that mentality, you're failing out of one MI school, you shouldn't go to another. That was the mentality at Fort Devens. Even though we were getting people from other schools that failed out of another MI field. So he was one of the first sergeant, or he was my favorite first sergeant I ever worked for, First Sergeant James. The higher rank I got, even though I only went through 4 ranks, I was only a PFC, a Specialist 4, I was a Specialist 4, and then of course Sergeant, and then Staff Sergeant before I transitioned over to the officer side of the house. But the higher rank I got and the more responsibilities that were laid on me, which I didn't mind. I didn't mind taking care of soldiers, but it was when I was taking care of soldiers at my last duty assignment and just a few headaches I had, I was like, multiply that by, I had 1 platoon or 1 squad out of 1 platoon, so multiply that by maybe 3 or 4 squads in a platoon, and multiply that by 3 or 4 platoons and possibly more. That's a lot of headache, because like once the internet caught fire, the company commanders and the first sergeants especially were looking up all their soldiers' profile on Facebook and any other source that might be linked to Facebook. I don't know how Facebook works. I don't know if it links to other sites. If it does. So occasionally soldiers would get called into the first sergeant due to some either things posted and or pictures taken and posted. But before the internet, I remember one occasion, my company commander, she got wind that one of her soldiers went to a strip club and stripped, supposedly. So the company commander was insisting that this person's clearance get yanked. Well, come to find out, the person that did this was just a simple 71 Lima, just a clerk, no clearance, and the company commander was a little upset because, well, can't do nothing now except tell her don't strip anymore or take your shirt off or whatever she did. And then transitioning over to the warrant officer, my first sergeant at my first duty station as a warrant officer, he was one of those that didn't appreciate that a bunch of sergeants left the sergeant ranks and became warrant officers, so he tried to throw his influence around. Me and another fellow warrant officer were sitting in the back of a Humvee without our Kevlars on, so he stuck his head in through the door and he says, well, you know, it's company policy, if you're sitting inside the vehicle you got to have your proper headgear on, and the proper headgear is a Kevlar. And we just both looked at him, we looked at one another, and then the company commander, I don't know if she was jokingly approving what the first sergeant said, or was serious because she kind of smiled when she goes, well, you heard what the first sergeant said. So we kind of looked at each other, looked at the company commander, and put our Kevlars on, and then first sergeant chuckled and walked away. Other than that, he was an okay first sergeant. There's Boris. He's on the landing, or on the shelf, I guess I should say. But yeah, I mean, first sergeant's responsibilities are many. And like I said, there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. Had another good one. I think I've told this story where the command sergeant major of the Army came to our section. I walked in needing a haircut as a warrant officer, and my first sergeant, who was bald, he kind of, did the squat next to my chair, and he goes, hey, Chief, you got a problem? And then I looked down at him and said, yeah, I need a haircut. And he goes, yeah. He says, it's either that or go see the commanding general of the post. And I was like, oh, can I really go see him? And he just gave me that wide-eyed look like, you can't be serious, Chief. And I said, yes, First Sergeant, I am serious. I would love to go talk to the general of this post. What's he going to tell me, First Sergeant? Get a haircut. And my dog tags, say I can't have dessert, as the joke goes. But he was a good first sergeant. He went from one company to another. And his replacement was a very good sergeant, very caring, very loving, very concerned about the troops. And she talked to me prior to becoming the first sergeant, my last first sergeant that I served with. And she's like, yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to be a first sergeant. I mean, she was talking to me. She goes, you do realize I'm going to be your new first sergeant? I said, yeah, I understand that. And while she was my first sergeant, that's when I was let go, retiring, and I went and spoke to her to tell her how good she was. And she told me she thought she made a mistake. She goes, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, it's just, I'm not getting the satisfaction. I said, but you're good. You take care of the troops. You keep them informed. You try to keep them out of trouble. Because the first sergeant is kind of like the go-between between all the enlisted ranks and the company commander, because the first sergeant is the first one that should know what's going on, so they can either they mostly will report all the transgressions to the company commander, so he knows, because in case it goes up the chain of command and the company commander gets called in by someone higher rank and he doesn't know about it, then of course he's going to be after his first sergeant, his or her first sergeant. But I was so depressed when she told me that. And I said, well, you're doing good. I don't know how long she did it after I left, because she was only doing it for about maybe a period of only 3 or 4 months by the time I had to retire. And the troops loved her. The troops liked her. She wasn't hard on them, as some first sergeants are. But as I said, at the start of this video, I first looked at it, but then again, the further I went up in ranks, I come to find out my particular MOS rarely even got selected for first sergeant slots. We're like I felt like we were the bastards. We're one of the most, when I was in, we were one of the most numerous MOSs within everywhere I served just about, but we don't get those high places. So probably going to do a few more videos talking about ranks. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more in depth about majors. What a rank. That is Boris. Don't tip over the camera. Boris, you're a bad kitty. So yeah, morning top. Felt so great. Say that occasionally. it felt great to challenge them occasionally, because some, like I said, some first sergeants, especially when I became a warrant officer, they're like, well, you do know who I work for. I'll go, yeah, but guess what? Your commander, the guy you work for, is not in my rating chain. And a lot of first sergeants were like, oh, so it's not like you can tell the company commander to influence my career. And I don't think I ever had a company commander in my rating chain as an officer. They were in my rating chain, I do believe, when I was an NCO. I think they had like the final say. I can't remember. I'll have to look at my old NCO YARs. So this chief out. It's been raining all week, which is nice. I stayed up late. I don't have to tell you who I was staying up late for. Whew, I'm so glad. I just can't believe all the salt on TikTok. I don't have TikTok, so I watch. Don't eat the cord, Boris. Boris, do not eat my cord. He's eating my cord to my light until he gets shocked. Like in what, Christmas Story or whatever the. Boris. Well, chief out. It's Veterans Day weekend. You know what to do with the vet. Take him to lunch, take him to breakfast, take him to dinner. And then the ones of you know what to do with them in the evening hours and late at night. Enjoy. Chief out. Remember, freedom's not free.